Angus,
Hello, hello.
how are you, man?
Good, really good.
Glad you made it in
How's this
here.
thing operating? Is this like a Zoom, like
The punter.
incorporated into the device, or is
Yeah,
it Circle, or what?
yeah. Well, I'll let Hunter answer that. Angus is wanting to know about the platform that we're using and how it all works, Hunter.
Circle. It has everything you need all in one. So
So
Yeah,
cool, so cool.
it's one of the reasons we picked Circle. Well, specifically, Hunter suggested
Nice,
Circle. I don't know much about tech, even though I'm in tech.
nice.
Uh, um, before everybody gets on here, Angus, do you want to WhatsApp me any like contact information for you that I can share with the group,
Sure, I can
or
do that.
is it in your email signature file? Maybe I have it already.
In my email, it doesn't have like numbers. It just has like my
Okay,
websites.
maybe you can shoot me like your email, your website, LinkedIn profile stuff, anything you want me to share
Okay,
with the group.
sure.
We're oddly not oh my God, how's it possible? Now we're connected. I just realized the other day that one of the ladies in this group, Emma, who I've worked with her company and coached her and worked with her for like 3 years, I just realized that we were not connected on LinkedIn yesterday.
The worst.
And I said, Emma, how are we not connected? And she said, you've been ignoring me, my request for 3 years.
So
Like,
bad.
it's buried under like 15,000 other connection requests of mine. So, I've tracked down. What's up, everybody? Just chill on mute for us for a minute while people start to funnel in. I've got Angus.
Hey everyone.
This is Angus's. In the chat, I just dropped Angus's LinkedIn profile here. I'll drop it more than once as other people come in. And I will also drop. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Angus. Perfect. His whole suite of contact information here.
You ask, you
Yeah,
receive.
no, it's perfect. It's perfect. I drop it a few times. But
How's life in Portugal, Angus?
Glorious. It is glorious. Yeah,
I
it's been.
can confirm it was pretty glorious when I was there.
Yeah.
I was in London this past week, and I just sent my wife a link of like the top 5 places to move outside the U.S. And I'm from Costa Rica. Costa Rica and Portugal are both on there, so I was like, food for thought. Food for thought.
Yeah. It's a lovely place, and there's a lot of expats here. You don't have to know Portuguese as long as you're like in Lisbon or Porto. You can get away with English just about anywhere. But I still try. My Portuguese is really shitty. The rest of my family, they all speak Portuguese much better than I do.
Prazer em você conhecer, Agnes.
Sim. Fala português em escola por 2 dias por semana. É muito difícil.
Que
You
legal.
studied Portuguese in school in Germany, and it's very hard to learn.
Yeah.
Check you out, Scott.
Yeah. It's the freaking
Full of
verbs. They're
surprises,
like
bitch. I'm full of
20
surprises, dog.
conjugations.
You are
It's a lot different than Spanish, isn't it?
Yeah, very different.
All right, let's do this because we have Angus for a limited time, and everybody else's time is precious as well. So kick things off here. Appreciate everybody joining, trying to make a special effort. This is recorded, so if you have to bounce halfway through or something like that, if some emergency happens, you can catch it all later on. Got Angus's contact information here in the chat, his LinkedIn profile. Do him a favor and connect with him on LinkedIn, and you can check out his website. Got his phone number, his email there. He's given us all the ways to reach out to him and get some help. I was in Portugal, as most of you know, about a month or so ago, and Angus was kind enough to meet up with me and share a coffee or whatnot, and come find me as I wasn't feeling too great. But we hung out and we're talking, and from my perspective, got along really well. Agree on a bunch of stuff, and just kind of chatting about how we might be able to help each other out. And one of the topics that we touched on was just like imposter syndrome, confidence, that type of stuff. And if you don't know, Angus is an executive coach and helps people with this kind of thing. So I thought, well, why don't I ask him to come talk to us as I kind of kick off this series every other Friday, where we have some people coming to talk to us about some cool topics. So he agreed to be on, and we're really fortunate to have him here, and I appreciate you spending your afternoon with us, Angus. So we'll let you take it away, man.
Sure. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. We're going to blow through some of this content, and I want to get to some conversation around it. But I'm going to start taking you back to the summer of June 24th. The year was 2000. And it was my first big music festival. It was all in full swing. We had this headliner, a band perhaps you've heard, called Train. And that afternoon we had thunder showers come in, and right before they broke was showtime. I needed 4,500 people to show up, and only 1,400 folks did. And so my little organization that day lost $72,000 just in that one weekend. And for our organization, that was just a crap ton of money. And rather than me go and get help and be able to ask my board for support or to delegate, those following 2 years, I did what a lot of people do, is I just put it on my shoulders and I said, I'm going to will this thing into existence. I'm going to make this thing work. My wife and I moved into my parents' basement. I was trying to pay everybody off, but under the pressure and all of the noise that I was feeling and hearing in my own head, I turned to coping mechanisms, and I was being driven by my ego, and it started with alcohol, and then it turned into porn, and then I was sleeping around. And in short order, I blew up my marriage, I blew up my business, and I blew up my sense of self. And in all of that, it was this place of a really dark season. I got divorced on December 23rd, 2003. And then just 2 days later, I was weeping underneath my Christmas tree, contemplating how I was going to take my life. And then I heard this voice, and it said, we're not done here yet. That very next week, I checked into counseling, and I started learning about psychology and human behavior and all these things that I'd never heard about before. Flash forward years later, a decade or so, and I'm running an innovation association for Fortune 500 brands with a guy I started the company with, an analyst named Jeremiah Aoying. And we set out to help during this time when peer-to-peer and crowdfunding and all these businesses were starting in the startup world, and we're helping corporate companies find opportunities for themselves to partner or to acquire or even disrupt themselves. Companies like General Electric or Wells Fargo, Disney, Coca-Cola, a whole bunch of massive brands. And I'd be talking with these executives, and they would be sharing with me not digital transformation, not innovation, but rather some of their personal challenges. And I started to see patterns in their lives of the pressures they were seeking and the pressures they were dealing with. And it reminded me of a lot of the patterns that I had gone through myself. But in that moment, I realized like I had a different skill set, and that was in coaching. And that's kind of was the beginning of my coaching. But in that moment, the story I want to share with you was a flight to go and pitch at the American Dental Association in Chicago. I'm on a flight, my colleague's sitting next to me, and I guess my leg was shaking up and down, and he turns to me, he's like, you good? You all right? And I went on to share with him, like, what am I even doing here? Like, with what I've done, with my background, with my track record, like I don't deserve to be here. And what if I screw this all up? Like, I failed with my first business. What makes me think I'm not going to fuck this up too. And then I was questioning, like, what if they find out that I don't, with my background, I don't have a college degree. I don't have the pedigree. I don't have all the things that a lot of these people, these executives have. And it revealed this weakness of a thing called imposter syndrome. It was a fear that I had. And he turned to me and he said something that I'll never forget. He said, if you have an invitation, you belong at the party. And I want to start off with this conversation because this is where it all begins, is knowing that every time you face that kind of resistance, you face those kind of doubts in your career, in your relationships, in money, you face these things that reveal something about yourself. And that's what we're going to talk about today. My name is Angus Nelson. I work with high performers who feel that plateau and are ready to break through to be something greater, to experience a life that truly resonates with their purpose. And it might be Portugal. That might be something that resonates with you. It might be Costa Rica, whatever it might be for you. I help people make that come alive in their lives. And for the last 20 years, I've been in marketing and sales, and I've learned how to redefine success. And I help my clients to balance growth and personal fulfillment in everything they can. And I'm working on a book right now called Confidence Comes Later: How the Quest for Certainty Holds Us Back. And we're going to tap into some of that today. The back story as well, I should also say, is I have 3 kids, 2 of which are with us, and I have one more 29-year-old who actually is going to Washington, D.C. this week to file her paperwork for her visa, and she'll be joining us in January. We've been here now 2.5 years, and if you want to learn more about that, you can check out House Hunters International season 190, episode 12, and we actually tell our story on that show. But today, we're going to tackle the limitations holding you back and create a path of like clarity and confidence and deep impact. So I'm excited to jump into this journey with you today. It starts with stories. I just shared with you a story. And that story I shared with you included the story of my past and the places where I have royally fucked up my life. And there are other stories where other people have influenced me by words they said or situations I was in, whether it was my 5th grade Little League coach or whether it was my dad who was having a bad day and called me a name he probably shouldn't, or whether it was that 2nd grade playground when one of the teachers choked me and made me feel less than. All of those stories in some way, shape, form will show up in our lives at the most inconvenient times. And in those moments, we have to question, am I worthy? Do I deserve? Do I have what it takes? And particularly for this audience in sales, there are stories in our heads about our relationship with money. There are stories in our heads about our relationship with other people. There's stories in our head around our relationship with what we perceive as success. How many of you have like tried to do something big? You're stepping out to do something, like raise your hand. And in that moment, you feel like, do I have what it takes? Right? It's like all of us. And in that moment, it's like nobody says shit to anybody. But yet we're all feeling it. We've all gone through, we've all been there. And what the biggest truth I ever learned was that even while I was working with these incredible executives who were like SVP, I worked all the way up to C-suite in these massive companies, and they're all just making it up as they go along. But it's how people define their stories and how they let those stories affect them, which decides or determines the ability for them to move higher or bigger or greater in their lives than those who allow the stories to hold them back. And so I want to start by just kind of taking this, where we started talking about tech. Your brain in a tech way is like a supercomputer. And the things we put in are like data, the data we put in from all of our childhood, from all those things we've experienced throughout our lives. Maybe it's in college. Maybe it's that job you didn't get. Maybe it's that time you got laid off. Maybe it's the time you got fired. And you start building stories about things because we are like meaning monsters. We love to place meaning upon the things that we experience. And from that judgment, then we define ourselves. It goes into the computer. And in our little computer, we start to create this identity. And then the computer wants to validate that information. And so in some weird way, I don't know if it's spiritual, psychophysical, like metaphysical, I don't know, but we seem to attract or create the relationships, the experiences, and the opportunities that echo the way we believe about ourselves. And so in that context, if we're experiencing really shitty stuff, it's possible that we could have some stories in us that tell us or are trained us to believe like we deserve to be treated shitty or to experience something really crappy. So with that, we have to change the narratives, the way that we translate some of these stories that we're allowing to define us. And again, it could be a relationship with money. Maybe you grew up in scarcity. Maybe you grew up with no money. Maybe you grew up in struggle. Maybe your dad always said there was never enough. Maybe your mom was a single mom doing the best she could, and all you experienced was less than. And now all of a sudden you're in an industry where there's lots of money and people are doing, and you're just at this tension about, can I ask for that much? Or should I ask for that much? Or what should I do with this money once I get it? And if I get it, do I just blow it? Or maybe it's a relationship with success. Sometimes people think there's a fear of failure, which that exists too, but typically it's a fear of success because we think on some level, if maybe the story you're telling yourself is that if people rise in the ranks, they become assholes. If they rise in ranks, they become arrogant. If they rise in ranks, they become some kind of an ugly human being. Well, I don't want to be that. And so you'll self-sabotage because on some level, you don't want to fulfill that story. Or maybe it's a relationship with yourself about emotions. You don't show emotions. No, I don't show emotions. Emotions are evil, or emotions make you weak. Or maybe it's your relationships with your physical body, where you tell yourself things like, I can never be in pictures because I'm too ashamed of my body. Or maybe I was always the little fat kid. And so as a grown-up, I still see myself as a trapped fat kid. Or maybe it's just your self-talk. Maybe it's you tell yourself you suck. You're never going to amount to something. Like all of those are the stories that play in our head, and nobody really like identifies like this is the static, the gremlins, the chatter in our brains, and they pop up most when things get challenging. So what stories do you tell yourself? And so if you have a notebook or you have your phone, open up the notes. If you want to do it on your computer, I want to just take you through a couple of exercises today. And the first one I want you to do is I'm going to give you 3 topics. And we just want to give you just a couple of minutes just to write down a few things. And this is just the beginning. Now, you don't have to go super deep right here, right now. But when we get off this call, I would love if you take some time just to reflect this. I think you would love you for taking some time to reflect this. So here's the thing I want you to write. 3 topics. One is career. The second is your finances or money. And the third, time. And the question I want you to answer about each of those 3 is, what is the story you tell yourself that holds you back about that topic? What's the story you tell yourself about your career that's holding you back? What's the story you tell yourself about money that's holding you back? Or what's the story you tell yourself about time? And if I had really cool music, I would play it right now. Some kind of thoughtful, spa-like, tranquil Meditative.
Zen garden music.
Exactly. All right. If you got a couple of things under each one of those, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Cool. I see some thumbs. There's more people than what I see on my screen, so I'm assuming there's some other thumbs going up. Cool. So now that you've written those stories, we're going to flip that here in just a moment. But I want to talk to you real quick how those things play out, because oftentimes we think we're self-aware, but most of us are not. We're like these impulsive, reactive, species. And these stories are causing us almost like, a bruise. And if somebody to reach out and touch that bruise, you immediately react. In the same way, it's like someone talks to you in a certain tone or says a certain word or gives you a certain look, and it immediately triggers you to something from your past. And so for some people, like I said before, there's that fear of success or fear of failure. There's imposter syndromes where you feel like you don't belong in that role or that company or that audience. Maybe there's analysis paralysis because you've become the perfectionist. And now that becomes a difficulty for you, the overwhelming tendency to overthink. And that leads to inaction, right? Maybe it's just self-sabotage, your consciousness or unconscious actions that are now preventing you from success. Maybe it's, that scarcity mindset we talked about, where you see resources as limited, opportunities as limited, success or creating anything seems limited. Or the flip side of it is you just have a fear of loss. Like, if I step out, what if I screw this up? What if I lose it all? Instead of being in a place of abundance, source, supply. And then there's comparison, right? You look at this person, let that person, like, man, how can that person be like that? I'm smarter than they are. Or you just get in a fixed mindset where you just aren't pliable. You aren't growth minded. Or maybe even on the lower level, in a lower energy, you feel like a victim. Maybe the cards haven't played in your way. Maybe your brother got the opportunity later. Maybe your sister did this something. And suddenly you see yourself as the victim. Oh, it's because of the city I live in. Oh, maybe it's because of the country I'm a part of. Or that's an inner critic that tears you down, won't let you move forward. Maybe it's approval addiction, where you're a people pleaser and you always need someone else outside of yourself to tell you you're going to be fine, you're going to be okay, that you're good. That's how those things are showing up in your life. Those are the things that are showing up, and it can look like indecisiveness. It can look like a lack of connectedness with people, with friends, with your colleagues. Maybe it looks like poor communication, where you're ineffective, or you blow up easily, or you're super touchy and you're prickly. Maybe it's poor executive efficiency. Maybe you can't delegate. You're a bit of a control freak. Maybe you have well-being as part of your challenge because you're not prioritizing your own life and health and how you eat or how you exercise. Or maybe you just don't have confidence. You don't believe in yourself. Like, this is the way this stuff shows up in our lives. So I want you to create a new story. So right next to that, or right below it, wherever you wrote that last story about your career, your money, or your time, I want you to tell yourself a new story. What is a new and empowering thing you want to tell yourself about this area of your life? Go ahead and write that down. What is the new and empowering story you want to embrace and tell yourself about your career? What's the new and empowering story you want to tell about yourself in your money, your finances? Or what's the new and empowering story you want to tell yourself instead about your time? Hey, Scott Leese just accepted my friend request. So cool. I'm looking for spa music.
I had to sacrifice somebody in the Philippines or someplace like that.
So fun. Because I found something for you.
Perfect.
It's really spa. Super spa.
Yeah.
Super zen.
I can picture it now.
Okay, if you have your new and empowering stories, give me a thumbs up. Cool. See a few of those. Good. All right. I see a little shaky hand too. That's okay. You'll have some time to work on this some more. So from that, we have to understand this premise. Like, man, I would love this, Angus. The story that you're telling. If only I had more confidence. And this is where the conversation begins. Because confidence can only exist in the past. Confidence will never and can never exist for the future. And it's a lie that we tell ourselves that we just want to be more confident before we can step into things. And typically we base that confidence on something that we've done. It's an external thing. Because I've done a thing, then I can be confident. And so we base that on something external, also something we can't control. And when you're moving forward in your life, you're constantly stepping into something new. You're constantly stepping into something you've never experienced before. So it's not logical to think that you can be confident about starting a new role or starting a new company, starting a new project. It's always an experiment. It's always just stepping into what could be. But what you actually need is something different, something around the area of belief. And we think that if I have confidence, I can do a thing, but actually you have to do a thing before the confidence comes. And we have it all wrong, because confidence is not about an achievement. It's not a goal measurement. Like, oh, now I've done this thing. Now I can be confident because I know what I'm doing and I'm competent and ... No, it's more of a growth measurement on something completely different, not something external, but rather something internal. Because confidence comes when you get comfortable in your own skin. And it has nothing to do about your external achievements. True confidence is about you, not the things you do. And so it's about how far you've traveled in this life, how far you've come. It's about allowing your life to be kind of like a roadmap, like, oh my gosh, I've been through this and I've been through this. And each one of those are like road markers of things I've accomplished, things I've overcome, things I'm actually capable of, and things that reveal your strength, your purpose, your abilities, your capacities, and who you've actually become. Then your assurance is about what you're capable and how you belong. You're at this place of meaning and contribution, not achievement. And so now when you show up from this place of expansion, this place of overflow because of who you are, not because of the things that you do. It's a deep-seated belief in knowing that who you are and what you're for. It's a belief that no matter what the outcome, you're going to be fine. It's a belief that you're exactly where you need to be right now, despite circumstances. It's a belief that you have everything you need for the very next step in front of you. It's a belief in you. That's what true confidence is. And so when imposter syndrome comes up, when these challenges and fears come up, we have to question, who do I believe myself to be in this moment? I'm a badass motherfucker. Look at all these things I've been through. I'm resilient. I'm unbreakable. I'm flexible. And through all the things in your story, if you start to like look at it for what it really is, suddenly you can operate in this new empathy, this new compassion, this new possibility, the new strength. Everything you've done in your life has prepared you for this. Confidence isn't actually necessary for the next step. You don't have to be confident in the thing. You just have to be confident in you. It's based on everything you've done, and more specifically, the stories you've told yourself about all those things that you've done. Now, when you look at your life, you can see it from a place of preparation, a place of power. So I want to do one more exercise. Well, actually, I'm going to take you through, it's an exercise that's going to take you on the flip-flop here, similar to what we just did. And to just think about what those stories that you told yourself, the negative stories that have canceled out opportunities, the stories that have cost you, because you kept this story in your head, it's affected how you've made career moves. It's affected how you've had sales conversations. It's affected how you negotiated or didn't negotiate a raise. It's affected like how you've tackled different challenges, how you've led your team, how you've stayed married or gotten unmarried in divorce, or how your kids believe in you or don't believe you, how you show up and be present for your loved ones. All of it is affected by the stories that you've told yourself. So my question to you in these areas about your career, about your money, about your time, what have those really crappy stories cost you? Write down what they've cost you, the limitations, the missed opportunities. And then on the flip side of that, I want you to write what would be possible if you believed the new story. What would be possible? Maybe you've been laid off. Maybe you've been challenged. What if you believed a new story? What if that door closed so a new one could open? What if what's being prepared for you is bigger than where you were? Maybe you're in a new role, a new position, and you're questioning whether you can lead. What if you were put in that position because you can? You just show up and be fully you. What if you have a dream to be in a certain place, in a certain space, a certain field? Maybe you have a hobby, a language you want to learn. Like, what would be possible if you just renegotiate with yourself a story around time? Time for your health, time for your kids, time for your partner. All right. If you got some things started, give me a thumbs up. Yeah. think I'm going to save this playlist. It's kind of chill. It's cool. Ultimately, this concept of confidence and stepping into these things that challenge us is about permission. Giving yourself permission to step into these new stories, these new realities, these new beliefs. Everything's on the opposite side of permission. And don't get me wrong, we're not in fairyland. I'm not trying to like be all woo-woo on you guys. Like once you change to positive mindset, everything is going to be honky-dory. No, in fact, the moment you step into something big with this new mindset, you're going to have resistance. Resistance will show. And I define resistance as the things that the universe brings to show you your flex, meaning it gives you an opportunity to actually walk out the thing you now believe. And so you step out to do something, like I'm going to save more money. I'm going to be more responsible with my finances. And then your car engine melts down and you got to take it in the shop. And you're like, I was trying to save money. But it's in that moment, it's like, no, we're going to take care of this and we're going to attract more money, more opportunity. I'm just going to go make more sales. Resistance causes the roots to go down deep in the same way that trees that grow on a hillside or grow by the beach and the winds blow, their root systems go deeper and they hold stronger. In the same way, like resistance is a way for us to build those kinds of deep resilience inside of us. And you never grow when things are going well. So you're going to have this ebb and flow. Sometimes when you're on the mountaintop, and then there's times when you go through the valleys that only strengthen you to climb higher. And in addition, we've got all these other things in the world. Like, I don't know if you've been paying attention. There's like a crazy election that's right in front of us. We don't know what's going to happen on who wins. We have potentials for world war, economic conditions. We have new efficiencies in businesses and companies that are slimming up. We have artificial intelligence, which is bringing us all sorts of crazy possibilities where it can target and nurture and even like have audio where it can call and speak to our potential sales. Like all that stuff's threatening our roles. And there's fewer people even answering to our DMs. There's fewer people responding to their emails, fewer people picking up their phone calls. Like in this world of sales, we can see that from a place of scarcity, or we can rise to the occasion and say, how can we change the game? How can we get super creative and become even more personalized, more high touch, more human, so that we can differentiate? Like when we stand in our power, when we stand in that place of abundance, that's where ideas come. When we sit in scarcity, we close off every opportunity. It's like blinders to a horse. But this power that you have inside to believe in yourself is in this same concept. And I'm just going to ask you this one question. How many of you have a college degree in sales? Go ahead and raise your hand. College degree in sales? One? I only see one. College degree in sales, right? Yeah. It doesn't exist, does it?
The youngest guy here.
Yeah. Because now there's a something, right?
Had the opportunity to even study it.
Didn't exist, right? And yet you were able to learn a new skill, to take on a new career. I bet most of you, when you're like, really young, didn't say, oh, one day I'm going to be in the sales industry. Most people in sales stumbled upon it, and yet we're all selling all of our lives all the time. And because you got into this new place where you've provided for your family, you've provided for your future, you know how to iterate. You know how to create something out of nothing. You know how to overcome many obstacles. And so my guess is, in the same way, you will continue to do it again and again and again, because it's who you are. It's what you're capable of. And so whatever you're facing, whatever challenges are coming, you get to lean into who you fucking are. You're powerful. You're resilient. And in that place, you give yourself permission. You make other possibilities within your reach. And the universe Whenever you have these challenges come and you feel that feeling that makes you want to go back to scarcity, you feel that feeling that takes you back to fear, you feel that feeling that makes you feel like an imposter. Know this, that the universe will always show you the areas of your life where you are not free. And so when you feel that, it's an invitation to uncover, where is that coming from? What's the story I'm telling myself? And I'm going to believe a new story. Guys, gals, who must you become? To do the things that you have in your heart, to fulfill the dreams you have for your family and for your future. Who must you become? You'll find it in the stories you tell yourself. Now I'll open it up for Q&A for you guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Angus. And open it up to anybody, but try to not have everybody jump off mute at the same time if we can. We got about 15, 20 minutes. So anybody raise their hand, want to chime in, ask a question?
I'll raise my hand if I can real quick.
Yeah, do it. Go for it.
Man, dude, this was fucking awesome. I apologize for being off of camera. I'm actually running errands for talking about our story. Taking today off for my daughter's Halloween party at school.
Nice.
But man, this one hit home, and it was one that I needed to hear. I have a very, very similar story, and this is actually like the first time talking publicly in a group of like people that are not in like my close network, but had my first startup in 2016, did the same exact thing. Took on the burden that led to me coping, alcohol, drugs, to the point where I actually finally hit rock bottom and checked myself into rehab.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, that held me back of thinking like, who am I? Am I good enough to, ran teams at Uber, VP of revenue now, but like, I finally feel like I'm actually in my zone. But it took me a very, very long time to actually get my head out of myself because it was holding me back. It's still not something I still keep it as like a treasure. So I'm not public about it. But I think today was actually a really good wake up call for myself that like, man, there's so many other people that are going through this to like embrace that. It's part of your story. It's part of your strength. So I appreciate that, man. I need to hear that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for making those dots connect, because I believe this, that when you show yourself vulnerable, you give others permission to do the same. I had 3 conversations within 2 weeks. 2 were CMOs and 1 was a CRO. And all 3 of them shared with me stories of nervous breakdowns they had at different situations in their lives. I was like, dude, can we get you on the podcast? Can we talk about this? I would love to have you tell your story. And one of them said, this will go to the grave with me. No one will ever hear this. And the one said, I'll share this when I'm ready, but I'm not ready yet. And the third one said, not until I retire. I'll never tell this story until I retire. And there's this stigma that says that when someone hears of a struggle you went through, it's kind of like maybe they'll weaponize it against me. And I believe, again, according to what we just defined today, is when you stand in your power, the way you tell your story actually reveals your power. And people can't take that against you. They can't make that a weapon. So, hey, thank you so much. And dude, I would love to connect with you and support you in any way I can.
Yeah, appreciate that, man. We'll definitely connect.
Thanks, Heath. Beth, let's go to you, please.
Yeah, I've had a few years behind me. And it gets easier, I guess, to revise your story and what you tell yourself, but it's really hard to get rid of that belief that the things that people said about you when you stepped up to be truthful and honest, there's not a grain of truth in it, right? I think one thing that we have as salespeople is we're used to hearing no more often than people in other jobs, right? Yeah. So that's good for us, but like it's really still challenging to consistently have to remake and revise and reflect and renew. I appreciate you sharing your story, and it's going in my don't forget you can do things, and that good things are ahead. But it's tough. I don't know if other folks feel that way, but it's tough.
Well, Beth, first of all, I'll give you a hug through the virtualness of all this, and there's some belief systems even in some of the things that you just said. If it's okay, I'd love to just give you just a quick coaching moment. But we tell ourselves about these areas of our lives that it's going to be hard and it's going to take a long time. And those are stories. And really, if we just give ourselves permission, or we just choose to believe something, it's instantaneous. Now, again, to your point, those things will crop up. They will pop up. The little gremlins are like, hey, stick me. And you want to get to that point where you get those voices to get softer and softer and softer and softer. And choosing to believe the new story, it may take you a moment to like give yourself permission, but that's the gateway, is just giving yourself permission to step in and explore that space and play with it. And you may take it from this angle, and then you'll come around and take it from this angle, and you'll build new stories and new almost weaponry against those old like record players that are in your head trying to tell you the narrative of whatever you experience and whatever they said. And then lastly is, how much power do you want to choose to give someone from your past? Full stop.
It's becomes more apparent in how I speak to myself when I'm speaking to someone else and helping someone else, where I'm much more comfortable in helping them see their strength and power. And then, using that as an example for kindness towards myself. And yes, the people who have harmed me in the past don't deserve my respect. So they are gone. It just helps me refine. But thank you for being here and for this conversation. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Justin has a hand up.
Yeah, go for it, Justin.
Yeah, so Angus, appreciate you joining, man. Super powerful stuff. This is my first meeting with the group here. So
sorry to set the bar so high.
No, it's like an awesome, this is an awesome way to kind of enter the group with I think the correct mindset and the guard down. It's funny you mentioned Train at the beginning. Pat's actually my brother-in-law, the singer for that band.
Wow.
I was pretty locked in right from that moment, but yeah, man, just want to say thank you. And like I said, this is a great way to kind of step into this group with the correct way of looking at things.
I'll tell you a quick story about Pat, your brother-in-law. I was mad at Train for years. I wouldn't listen to their music. I blamed them for that situation. Like my mind was so twisted. It was their fault. I lost so much money. And my wife and I, this is 4 or 5 years ago, Train was playing in Nashville, which is where I moved from, Nashville, Tennessee. And I bought tickets, didn't tell my wife, and we went to date night. And I was like, come on, let's go. We went to Bridgestone Arena. She's like, where are we going? And I was like, we're going to Bridgestone. Cool. And we're walking up. She goes, holy shit, this is Train. And she looked at me. I was like, it's time to bury the hatchet. And I loved every fucking moment of that. I could get emotional. Like, it was such a release for me in that moment. And Train will ever hold a place in my heart, dude. Always.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. Very cool. You're on the hook now, Justin, to deliver Train at the first retreat of ours. Just so you know.
Scott, he's pretty expensive. I'll see if I could swing the family deal.
Yeah, he was get a family discount. We'll make it happen.
He was $27,500 back in 2000. So he's probably come a long way because he only had drops of Jupiter and Meet Virginia back then. So
right.
Well, there's some salesmanship involved because I could argue he's come back down over the years and he's not at his peak anymore. So we'll get after it. The next hand that I saw was Sean Kermath.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. You started talking about this this is kind of more like a tactical question.
Yeah.
And you start kind of touching on this with Beth and a couple other things you're talking about is the record player, right? Rumination. That is, to me, the hardest part of this, right? When you're going through like story, man, that story came out real quick. Like exactly what it is, because it's on repeat, lives rent free in my head every hour of the day. And I think, and then writing the news story was just even difficult because of that, because all I could do was even just like focus on ruminating that story, right? It's like I don't even think I was able to even successfully write a news story in the first place. So like, is there anything tactically that you would suggest to help with that, or just what I'm talking about makes sense?
It absolutely does. And one of the tools we use in our program, we actually call it 10-minute motivator. I'm in real time, like right now, later on tonight, I'm working on the AI prompts to try and get this all AI driven, but I currently have a version of it that is just, you fill out a Google form and then it spits out a thing for you. And every day my members are to rehearse this as a non-negotiable. And it starts with a manifesto, and it has some affirmations, and it has what we call principles, which are your worldviews from quotes of people you admire and aspire. And the whole thing is to do two things. One is retrain your subconscious to remind you who you are. And then number two, inside of it, it attaches emotion with the thing that you're focused on. Because what we know is logic plus emotion ingrains the synapses in your mind and locks things in. Again, what I said to you before is we experience something, we place a meaning on it because we never remember things as they actually happen. We remember them by the way they made us feel. And that's an emotion. And those become enriched or ingrained into our lives. And so now the practice is on a daily basis. We spend 10 minutes just rehearsing. Sometimes they do it 2 or 3 times. Now I have a poster on my wall, and every time I sit in my seat, it's my trigger. I turn to the wall and I read this. And we also have what we call our inner badass, and it's a name we give ourselves in the same way that Kobe Bryant, was the Black Mamba, or Beyonce has a alter ego as well, Sasha Fierce. Like we give ourselves these images of who we are, and I'm King Black Bull, the alchemist. I'm the bull that can walk into a china shop and break shit when he needs to, or I can stand in my prowess and people know my power. I take chaos and confusion, I turn it into sense. I turn it into ease. I turn it into possibility. I know who I am. And that has come from rehearsing and rehearsing and rehearsing, because your entire day, every day, is filled with indoctrination, whether you're watching the news, whether you're watching Sports Center, CNN, or ESPN, or whatever else, the radio that you listen to. All of it is programming our brain every single moment of our day. We're in constant indoctrination. And so the question is, what will you choose to listen to? And so we have to get really intentional to change the record player. And it's in the books you read, it's in, audio books, it's in, the movies you watch or the music you listen to. It will transform you if you change the spirit, the energy, the vibe of what's around you. Does that help?
It does. And I think I just need to spend some time crafting who that person is and what that story is in the first place. And
I just want to give this to you and to everyone. Like, if you want the 10-minute motivator, just shoot me a note, dude. It's my gift to you.
Angus, real quick, we had a question in the chat. Logic and emotion creates blank. What was that?
It creates, it's like a neural pathway. It creates the ingrained version of our memory system. So it's how memories and feelings and identity is probably a more particular piece. It's how identity is formed with logic and emotion.
All right, cheers. Let's go to Stephen Botts and then Stuart. Those are the next 2 hands that I see.
You're muted, Stephen.
Botts, you got to come off mute.
I think you just said that Sean basically applies. Because to me, like, the biggest thing that resonates is, like, I know in my heart I'm a pleaser. And I think that's like the source of a lot of both the things that I take on for others the things that I don't delegate away. And most importantly, like the difficult conversations that like a lot of my costs were like things that I have not asked for or have not done because I've done it for the good of the company, you know, not for myself. And I think so kind of what you said is like, I think it's just kind of, I'm self-aware of those things, but just going from the being able to like identify it, talk about it, to just like actually embodying it, you know, almost like equated to sales. Like I sucked at sales for a long time, but I had to become not Steve Botts. I had to become the guy who could negotiate $1 million deal. And like when I'm in my sales thing, I'm like, it's like my superhero cape. Like I'm not me. I'm a different guy, you know? And I just like getting there on some of these other things is just, it's hard. So I think it's a lot about what you just kind of said. And I think that maybe the motivator and the personality archetype is like key part of that.
Yeah, that's really rich. And people pleasing is a big issue. And we're learning that in our practice more and more, is like how much the things that we do in our lives are dictated because of the expectations of someone else. And that's a boundary issue, you know? And so once you start working in some of these areas, you incorporate boundaries as part of it. That's the stuff that'll set you free. And at first it sucks because the people that are around you are in some way getting something from you allowing yourself to be abused. You know, by you stepping in to be the hero, by you stepping in to be, you know, the one that rescues or organizes or facilitates, they get something out of that. And so the moment you decide, hey, I'm not going to do that anymore, that's not who I am, they might get a little pissed and it might get a little ugly, even if it's a family member. And yet it's part of the process. It's how you have to like kind of cut free from that people pleasing part. That's a whole nother conversation, but it's rich. Thanks, Stephen.
All right, Stuart, let's go to you.
So, Angus, when you were telling the story before about the CROs who didn't want to tell their story till they retired and that thing, that really, the first thing that popped into my mind when you said, well, why wouldn't they do that? And to me, it was, didn't want to show weakness. And for me, that's something that I think holds me back, as something in my DNA or my background doesn't want to show weakness, which then turns into not wanting to admit when I'm wrong, not asking for help, and not accepting mentorship. Just wonder if you had any comments on that or tips on that issue.
Yeah. Well, two things. The straight talk is ego. You know, there's all of us have some ego, and when we step into this teachable space, we have to contend with. But then there's a second piece, which is also propensity. So there are some personality types that have a propensity that showing weakness is hard. And so one of the tests I would invite you to explore is the Enneagram. So just like Myers-Briggs or the 16 personalities, you know, DISC profile, all those, we use the Enneagram because it's more of an emotional test, and it'll help you explore the things that you move towards or the things you move against, you know, move away from. And on that, typically someone who ranks on the 8, there's 9 different profiles, and then they merge. There's more, but those are the primaries. 8s have difficulty just inherently showing weakness. And so it's one of their challenges. My oldest daughter's an 8, and I have multiple clients that are 8s. And it's not something that you can't overcome. It's just you find a new way to approach it. And the reason why is because there's an element of safety, and you kind of identified that. And so as long as you're in a safe environment, it's easier for you to be open or vulnerable than to be out in public to share that. But then again, it goes back to what I said. It's about how you grow from the inside, and then your ability and comfort to then share it later. You don't have to come out right now. It's like, I'm suffering and suck at this thing, or, you know, whatever. You don't have to do that now. It's just a matter of kind of growing that muscle. And it doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean that you're bad because you struggle with it. It just means it's a muscle you haven't flexed yet.
Thank you.
You bet. My pleasure, Stuart.
All right, we're getting close to the end of our time with Angus, but we've got a question from Nick, and then I think we'll probably wrap. And everybody, I'll drop Angus's information one more time so you can reach out to him and connect with him and thank him. But let's go ahead and go to Nick.
Appreciate it. No, you just, Angus, you just said something about how you need to create boundaries, effectively create boundaries. And part of my new story for time was I effectively create boundaries in every phase of my life, right? Whether it be my work hat, my dad hat, my other activities and other social circles I have. But that was literally part of my new story. But I don't know if you can elaborate on that for a minute or so, but appreciate the time and thought.
Boundaries around time specifically is the question.
You mentioned how important boundaries are. I think part of Stuart's question and Stevens, I think that was my question around how do you effectively do that and part of creating your new story?
Yeah. So highly intentional. Like Steven, I was a people pleaser and sometimes struggle with that. It has taken me forever to let go of that in my familiar family. So holidays were always Angus and my wife. We always organized all the boundaries, or excuse me, all the holidays for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And we've done that for like a decade. And so we always said, oh, we're going to meet here, or everybody's going to come over here. And we did all the cooking, all the cleaning. Everybody slept at our house or, at the Airbnb that we put together or whatever. And then one year I just said, y'all just tell us where to show up. And you would have thought I killed their kitten. My family got so mad that we were not making plans, so mad that we ended up not having a Thanksgiving. And the bitterness grew to where we didn't have a Christmas that same year either. And I had to hold it. I had to hold the line. And it was crushing me. It felt so bad. And I wanted to come in like, hey, I changed my mind. Hey, instead, why don't... And I was like, no, I can't. I'm not going to do this. And so part of it is establishing what are the things you're comfortable with? What are the areas of your life that you can open up to be allowing for other people that you're willing to negotiate and say, yeah, I can do this. But then what are the things that are non-negotiable? I'm not going to allow this in my life. I'm not going to allow these kinds of things. Whether you're, again, in your time or your relationships, you have to establish the kind of life and space and energy you want to protect. And then you build around that.
Thank you.
And do it with grace. You don't have to be an asshole to do it. You can do it with grace. Now, how people respond is their issue, right? Yeah, boundaries are huge. There's a couple books. Dr. What is his name? Boundary. Just look up, go to Amazon, boundaries for parents, boundaries in the workplace, boundaries, whatever. I think it's all the same guy or his team.
This has been great. I think everybody has enjoyed it, especially those people who didn't even come off mute and chat. I know people have been getting a lot of value out of this. I hope you get a lot of messages from the team, Angus. And I know everybody, including myself, really appreciates you spending some time with us. And if we can ever return the favor and be helpful to you, please let us know what we can do to support you and the work that you're doing, because it's super important for all of us. So
awesome.
Thanks everybody. We Angus, by the way, we'll get you the recording of this so you can chop it up and use it however you want. Awesome. Everybody else, we'll see you all next week. Thanks so much.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Come to Portugal.